the warning. And then I'm going to real quick just post that the call is starting now, just as a reminder to anybody that wants to jump on. And then we'll get going. Okay. So I hope everybody's doing good. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. That's posted. So we left off last week with, we left off at chapter 5. So we're starting this week's discussion at chapter 6. And I'm just going to get right into it because we only have about an hour. And I want to make sure that you guys have time to share your takeaways at the end. Hi, Mama. I see you down there, Teresa. All right. So chapter 6, the lie. No is the final answer. That was the lie. My keeper for this chapter was no is only an answer if you accept it. And I think that that's really important to stress because there's going to be a lot of times in your life where you're hearing no. And for me as a health and fitness coach, I literally hear, and Megan and Teresa can attest to this too, but like we hear no literally all day long. And there was a study done at one point that shows that people will say no 7 times to something before they say yes. And oftentimes it's not even because they are saying no, like they don't want to do something. It's usually out of fear. Like no is usually us saying we're afraid to fail, you know, and that fear of failure can be really real. And so it's really important as you go throughout your life to know that no is only an answer if you accept it as an answer, and that it more oftentimes no means not right now, not no, period. So the first question on the discussion guide was, if no is not a reason to stop, what are some of the strategies that it might signal? And so what I wrote for this question is, think of no as a detour or a yield sign. So again, that yield sign meaning, it's not a stop sign, it doesn't mean no. It's not a green light, it doesn't mean yes, but it's that yield sign. It's somebody's kind of like wavering in between. It just simply means not right now. No means merge with caution. No reminds you to slow down, to reevaluate where you are, and to judge how the new position you're in can better prepare you for your destination. And then one of the other things that I wrote down is, if you can't get through the front door, try the side window. If the window is locked, maybe you slide down the chimney. So I'm going to reference this in terms of kind of like me as a health and fitness coach to give an analogy or an example. So a lot of the times we reach out to people and we offer this opportunity of, you know, doing a workout program with us or trying a new nutrition plan or whatever it might be. And people will say no. And a lot of the times it's our job to try to get in, you know, her saying like, if you can't get through the front door, go in the side window. Like it's our job to kind of try to find an alternate way to help people, to get them to see that this is a good opportunity for them, to help them to work through their excuses, to help them to figure out that this is a good opportunity for them. And so I feel like that's what we do every single day, is try to find an alternative way into helping people. If the window is locked, maybe you slide down the chimney. It's basically just saying that you're going to hear no a lot of times in your life, guys. And if every time you hear no, you accept it as finality and you don't keep pushing for what you want, you're never going to achieve the goals and the things that you want out of your life. It's the same as if you go for a job interview, right? And if any of you have ever gone for a job interview and you're like, this is the job, like this is the one that I want so badly. And you go to this interview and you find out that the answer is essentially no, that you weren't accepted for the position. It doesn't mean that that's never going to be the job for you. It might just mean that you have to find an alternative way to get there. It may not have been as easy as you had hoped it had been, but ultimately you keep your goals the same and you just keep pushing forward. You don't accept no as an answer. You have to have that attitude throughout your entire life. Like, you're going to hear no all the time. You're going to hear it every day. But if you have something that you want, you just push through and you find a different path to get to where you ultimately want to be. And then I wrote down, no doesn't mean you stop. It simply means that you change course in order to make it to your destination. So again, it's that thought of like taking a different path, taking a different road, going down a side road. You know, maybe getting on the highway and going from exit 3 to exit 1 is a lot easier, but then, you know, taking all these side roads, and maybe it's going to be quicker to get on the highway and just get there. But there's going to be times where you have to take the side roads and it's going to take a little bit longer. But if you stay persistent and patient, you will get there. So those are the two things that I think are most important. It's persistence and patience. I'm muting you guys just so you know, because there's a little bit of background noise. So if at any point you have something you want to say, unmute yourselves, okay? Okay, so that's the first page of our discussion guide for chapter 6. The second piece of it said, every single part of your life can be changed by a shift in your perception. Does this mean that all truth is relative and dependent on individual perspective? Why or why not? And what does it mean to you? So this piece, this one piece of this chapter, I feel like has really helped me a lot in my life, because the part where she says, what if you look at things in life as not happening to you, but happening for you? That was a big game changer for me. You know, I've always been, you know, my mom is a very big pessimist, and I feel like I grew up with that like negative mindset where like the victim, right? We've all played the victim, and we've all kind of felt sorry for ourselves in times of our lives where we're like, oh geez, you know, this happened to me and this happened to me. I've gone through a lot of struggles. I can remember when I was trying to get pregnant with my kids, and I was like, why is this happening to me? Why can I not get pregnant? And after 3 years of every single method you could possibly imagine, like I used to always think that it was happening to me. And if you can shift that perception a little bit and start looking at life as things are happening for you, I can look back now, and it's easy to do after, right? But it's really hard to do in the moment. And where I feel like your life will change is if in those tough moments, you're able to take a step back and have that perception of this is happening for me, not to me. So another thing that I love that she said, and what I wrote down here, is you don't see things as they are, you see things as you are. You see things through the lens of what you think, feel, and believe. And perception is everything. The way you perceive people in your lives, the way you perceive events that happen in your lives. I can remember, like, I grew up with a father who, my mom was a pessimist and my dad was like the optimist, and that's probably why they do so well together. But like my dad was always the person where I would say, you know, so-and-so did this at school and it really hurt me and I'm so sad. And my dad would say, well, like, you determine if you're sad. You determine if you're happy. Nobody else gets to control, you know, the way you feel. You control the way you feel. And I can remember thinking, like, that's so annoying. Like, why would he be telling me this? Like, how the hell can I control how I feel? I feel sad. That's me. Like, that's what I feel. And I remember, like, that was such a message that I always heard from him was, you know, you control your emotions. You control how you respond to things. Like, if so-and-so is really trying to, you know, if they're saying mean and hurtful things to you, you control whether or not that bothers you. You control if you know, that changes the way that you look at yourself. And I remember thinking then that seems so ludicrous and ridiculous, but it really is true. Everything is about the lens that you're looking through. So if you're going through tough times, if you're going through great times, you know, like people that have the most beautiful life, if they have the wrong lenses in front of them and all they can see is the bad, then they're never going to be able to see the beauty of the life that they actually have. So, you know, I loved her analogy, excuse me, when she talked about like a fire and how different people look at a fire differently. Like a fireman sees that as a job to do. And, you know, an arsonist sees that as something that's exciting and good. But what if that fire is happening in your house? You have a totally different perception of fire than the fireman who shows up at your door to try to put out the fire in your house, right? You see it as you're like, I'm going to lose everything. This is my whole world. This is my whole life. Like, and it's complete panic and anxiety and fear. To the fireman, it sounds bad to say this, but he's just doing his job. So it's all about perception and the way that we see things. Number 3, what does Rachel describe as one of the greatest lessons in this life or the ultimate excuse? And basically she says disaster is the ultimate excuse. And one of the other things that I wrote down is that the only thing worse than giving up is wishing that you had it. I think that's something that's really important to focus on, is there's no worse feeling than spending the rest of your life wishing that you hadn't given up on something. So like, think of those times where maybe it was a job that you've always wanted and you just gave up on that. Like, what are your dreams that you've given up on? There's really, truly nothing worse than that feeling of that you just gave up. So don't be the person that just takes no for an answer. Don't have that finality. If there's something that you truly want in life, you have to go after it and you have to get it. Because you're going to spend the rest of your life wishing you hadn't if you do. Okay, so my takeaways, I wrote, I am successful. This is a direct quote from the book. I am successful because I refuse to take no for an answer. I am successful because I love you. Because I have never once believed my dreams were someone else's to manage. And one of my favorite takeaways from this chapter was nobody gets to tell you how big your dreams can be. I think a lot of the time, like this is another example from the health and fitness coaching world, but I have this dream of being this incredible top coach and making all this money, helping people change their lives. My family doesn't really get it. Like I went to school to be a pharmacist, making 6 figures, and I have my doctorate. That they get. This they don't get. So sometimes it's hard because you can feel like nobody really has that appreciation for your grind and your hustle. But nobody gets to tell me how big or little my dreams can be. Just like nobody can tell me what my dreams can be. So whatever it is that you want out of your life, you have to go and get it, and you have to push yourselves for it, because ultimately nobody's going to want that for you the way that you want it for yourself. Okay. Chapter 7. How excited are we all to discuss this one? So the lie, this one's going to get a little bit awkward, but I'm going to keep it brief. The lie is I'm bad at sex. To consider or discuss, number 1, the author thinks that sex is a big deal in a marriage relationship. Do you agree? Why or why not? So this is my standpoint on it. Yes, I think it's crucial. And what I always tell people is sex ultimately is the only thing that you can have with your partner that you and he can't have, or you and she, whichever it might be, can't have with anybody else. So that intimacy, that closeness is something that only you two can share. And what I mean by that is, like you can hire a maid, right, to help you clean your house and to do things. You can hire somebody to clean your house. You can hire somebody to mow your grass. You can hire somebody to, you can have a therapist that you have that can talk to you and listen to you and hear your emotions. You have friends that can go out and have dinner with you. And so there's all of these other pieces can be fulfilled by other people in your life. If you're in a relationship, that intimacy or that sexual piece can only be fulfilled by your spouse or your significant other. So do I think it's important? Absolutely. I think that it's way more important to men than it is to women. And I think that that's a huge character trait and difference in sex. I think that we as women tend to focus more on the emotional and mental piece of a relationship. And I think men tend to focus more on the physical. And I think it goes hand in hand. I think that men tend to need that physical, and women can't give the physical if there's not the emotional being fulfilled. And I think the opposite is true. If, women want emotional and they can't give the physical if that emotional isn't being fulfilled. So I think it's a very healthy piece of a relationship. I think it's a very essential piece of a relationship because, again, at the end of the day, like you could have a friend, right, that you do everything with minus sexual things, but you still need that with somebody in your life, I believe. Okay, so 2 is the author lists 7 strategies that helped improve her sex life, summarize each one in a line. I'm just going to list them. 1, I refined sex in my own mind, changed what I thought sex was. 2, I figured out how sex could be an earth-shattering experience. 3, read the scriptures. 4, I embraced my body. Okay, this is the piece that I want to focus on because we as women are very insecure. It's a part of like our personality traits. It's a part of who we are. I loved when she said, your partner is just thrilled you showed up, because honestly, that's the truth. And I talk to people about this sometimes when it comes to like confidence and other aspects of their confidence level and things. But it's like when you're shopping, right? And your husband is like, I love that dress on you. And maybe you don't love the dress on you. You're like, I don't really think I look good. And like, I actually kind of think I look like shit in this dress, but he like really loves me in this dress. Just get the damn dress, because ultimately, like, you want to please your spouse. And if they're telling you guys that you look freaking banging hot in the dress, chances are you look banging hot in the dress. Like, they're not just going to say that to you just to feed you BS or blow smoke up your ass. Like, and it's exactly true for sex. Like, they're not expecting you to be some supermodel, right? They're just happy and thrilled that you showed up and that you're there and that you can have that opportunity to connect with them. So let go of the expectations and just be confident in that. 5, I committed to my orgasm. Super awkward. 6, had to figure out what turned me on. 7, I committed to sex every day for a month. So my takeaway from this was orgasm is the cake. There you go. That's chapter 7. All right, chapter 8. These 2 got pretty heavy for me because I am a mom. I have 2 kids. And I think momming is hard AF. Like, that's just simply put, it is so hard. And I think especially when you're really in the early stages of it, it's really, really hard. So chapter 8, the lie is, I don't know how to be a mom. My keeper from this chapter was, you don't have to have it all figured out and you don't have to know everything. We rarely are as uncertain as we are during new motherhood. Nobody can prepare you for when you bring that newborn home. Nobody. No matter how, like, even if you have, like, I'm the honest friend. Megan and Teresa know this about me. Like, I just, whatever I think, it just comes out. And if I don't speak it, you can see it on my face. Like, it's just, that's one of my traits. And some people hate it and some people love me for it. But even if you have like that friend that has no filter, that's like, dude, just so you know, I'm really happy for you that you're pregnant, but being a mom is like really awful. And you love your kids, but it's hard, guys. And like, if you have that friend that's super honest with you and tells you like it's really, really hard, and you know, they're trying to prepare you, nothing, even that, literally nothing will prepare you for how uncertain you will be in that period as you become a mom. So number 1 says, luckily for me, Dave and all the other humans on this planet, relationships are full of opportunities for grace. The author is writing about her early days of motherhood, but this could apply to anyone in any relationship. If you feel comfortable, share one that you've experienced. I loved where she said, on my wedding day, I never thought I could hate you as much as I hate you right now. Because I had many moments of that feeling with my husband, and I love my husband. I adore him. We'll be married 10 years, October 3rd. But nothing challenges a marriage and a relationship the way having this screaming, crying, irrational human being does. My biggest struggle, and the way when I felt like this towards my husband, was when I had postpartum anxiety with Mackenzie. And for those of you that didn't see the recap from last week or the recording, it got pretty ugly. And I talked a little bit last week about how when I had postpartum anxiety and I was convinced something was terribly wrong with me, I went to the hospital twice. And both times, my husband thought that I was legitimately losing my mind, that I was absolutely crazy, and that absolutely nothing was wrong with me. And so he refused to go to the hospital, refused to take me. And so I drove myself. And I can remember being laying in that hospital bed, completely alone, a complete wreck. And I hated him so much in that moment, that I was alone, that he wasn't supporting me, that even though he felt my feelings were irrational, that I didn't. And I really, truly was scared, and that he couldn't put me and my fears and my anxieties first. And that was really, 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 really hard. So, you know, she talks about like, there's all these opportunities for grace. And I had to take a step back and realize, like, he was sleep deprived. I was sleep deprived. I was not myself at all. He was not himself. We were under a tremendous amount of stress. And I had to have grace with that and say, you know what? I know he loves me. I know he cares about me. I know he only wants the best for me. I know he'd never let anything happen to me. I just have to accept what happened and move forward. So that's number 1. Number 2, what according to the author should be the only 2 items on a new mother's to-do list? So number 1, take care of the baby. Number 2, take care of yourself. It's really easy to get wrapped up in all of the other things that you need to tend to. And, you know, your house isn't as clean anymore. Your dishes aren't always done. Your laundry's never, you know, washed or folded. Dinner's not on the table every night when your husband comes home. Whatever it might be, you're not sleeping, you're exhausted. Like it all goes to shit. And at the end of the day, you just have to remind yourself that, is baby okay? Baby's alive. I'm alive. And did I take care of the baby? Did I take care of myself? The second one is the most important, because as a new mom, you're just going to want to focus on number 1. But again, this all goes back to such a huge focus that we had last week, which is you can't pour from an empty cup. If you just focus on the number 1 of taking care of the baby and you're not taking care of yourself, ultimately, you're not going to be able to take care of the baby. So reminding yourself that you can't pour from an empty cup, you have to put your oxygen mask on to be able to take care of and put on your baby's oxygen mask. You have to take care of yourself. Number 3, you can't fail a job you were created to do. What does the author mean by that? What other jobs besides motherhood could that apply to? So I wrote down the quote from the chapter, and she says, the God who made the moon and the stars and the mountains and the oceans, the creator who did all those things, believed that you and your baby were meant to be a pair. You were chosen to be their mom. You were created to do this. You cannot fail if you love them and you do your best. And I think that's really important to remember, that all you can do, and we'll talk about this a little bit with chapter 9, but all you can do at the end of the day is your best. And maybe your best is different from your mom friend's best, but all that matters, like, you were meant to be a pair. You were meant to be together. You were meant to be the mother to your children, and you are what's best for them. And some days it doesn't feel like that. A lot of days it doesn't feel like that, but you have to remind yourself that you were chosen for a reason to be their mom. Okay, so then I just wrote down my takeaways, which were quite a bit. So I'm going to read some of them. I love when she said I was unprepared for how inadequate I'd feel as a new mom. I think that that's where I really struggled, was leaving a 6-figure income, being a pharmacist full-time, to just, and I say just very, you know, lightly, because trust me, being a mom is not just anything, but just a mom. And I felt super inadequate. Like, nothing I did was good enough. And then she said, because I was so concerned with how we should all look as a family, I didn't take the time to let myself feel connected. This applied to me in a different way, but I shared last week about my experience trying to breastfeed my daughter. And that was my, like, because of how I was so convinced it was supposed to look like the beginning stage. I was supposed to be able to nurse my daughter. I couldn't connect with her. I was so focused on what I thought was supposed to happen. Like, you guys ever do that, where you get something in your head and you think something out? Like, I'm notorious for this, and this is one of my biggest downfalls. If I have a big event coming up, I like go through it in my head, and in my head I decide how I want it to go. And if it doesn't go like that, I lose it. So that's what happened when it came to having my daughter. In my head, I was like, well, I breastfed Landon for 15 months. It was this beautiful experience. I loved being a new mom. I loved the baby stage. And then all hell broke loose. And I felt like, because it wasn't going the way in my head I decided it was supposed to go, I was missing that connection with her. And then I loved too when she talked about how, you know, you're so sleep deprived that you don't even realize you're chasing this impossibility. And you get so wrapped up in, like, what being a new mom looks like on TV shows and movies and magazines, and most important, Pinterest and social media even. And it's just this false reality where you again, it goes back to that highlight reel, and you have to let go of, you know what, you're probably not going to be that Pinterest mom. And that Pinterest mom that is showing up on Pinterest with all these amazing, beautiful things for her newborn, or ideas, or whatever it is, first birthday parties up the wazoo, she's probably drowning inside. Like, yeah, maybe she has, it looks like from the outside she's got all of her shit together, but chances are she's drowning, just trying to stay afloat and keep up this perception of, like, this beautiful, perfect life. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to talk as fast as I can. take a break from social media and Pinterest. That's like the worst thing you can do. A lot of us tend to, like, we're nursing at all these ridiculous hours of the night, and your instinct is to grab your phone and start scrolling. That's the worst thing that you can do. Stay away from social media. Pick up a book when you're nursing. Put on a television show. Do literally anything besides scroll through social media, because it's not going to make you feel any better. And then this is important. Talk to somebody about your feelings. I talked last week about how important I think therapy is. Nobody talks about postpartum anxiety and depression. When I was going through it, I felt like I was this lone, like, person, and that nobody else in the world dealt with it, had it, experienced it. The more that I talked about it, the more people that were like, oh my God, yeah, I had that too. And still to this day, like, when I share about my postpartum anxiety and depression, so many women are like, oh my God, thank you. I just had this happen 2 days ago. She was like, thank you for sharing that with me, because I thought I was legitimately crazy. I thought I was the only person having these feelings, and I felt like a horrible person for feeling the way that I felt. So know that it's normal, know that it's real, and find somebody to talk to about it. Okay, chapter 9, how are we doing? Okay, the lie, I'm not a good mom. A keeper for me was, we're doing pretty good, and pretty good is way better than trying to fake perfection any day of the week. Number 1 said, if you have kids, write down at least one area where you're vulnerable to feeling like you're not a good or good enough mom. Write down at least one of your strengths. So feeling not good enough for me, I am not the mom. Like, Rachel talks about how she's not the mom that enjoys sports. Like, I am never going to be the mom that wakes up at like 9 a.m. You can see how that sounded early. Okay, 6 a.m. Hold on, because now you guys know, like, Teresa's like, what? That's like literally a vacation for me. Okay, 6 a.m. I'm not the mom that wakes up at 6 a.m. And I'm out of the house by 7:30, and maybe it's like summer, right? And Monday we go to the park, and Tuesday we go to the museum, and Wednesday we go to the water spray park, and Thursday we go to Billy B's, and Friday we go to gymnastics and open gym, whatever. Like, that's just not who I am. And it's because I tried to be that mom, and I don't do well. Like, when I have to wake up, get the kids dressed, and we have to be out the door, and it's like, we go here, we go there, we come home, we do naps, and it's constant. I'm like this as a mom. And I don't do well with that. My kids don't do well with it because I don't do well with it. So I tried it. When Landon was like, I can remember when he was like 18 months, and my best friend is the type where she's out of the house every day. She has a schedule. Every week she has a schedule. She takes like 1 day a month to stay home and do nothing. And that works well for her because she's a stir crazy person. Like, she doesn't like to be home, and her kids don't do well being at home. So some days I feel like I'm not good enough when I see like other moms that are always out doing these amazing activities for their kids. And I'm like, I wish that I could be that mom. I wish that I could, get up really early, get my workout done before they even wake up, and then just spend the rest of the day like doing things for them. That makes me sound really selfish, but I realized that it didn't work for my family. And so some days we do that. Some days we go to the park. Some days we go to the zoo. Some days we do things, but we don't do it consistently every single day because I will crumble, which ultimately means they crumble. So, and also too, daddy's the fun one. That just annoys me. So I'm going to leave that like that. But daddy's always the fun one, and I'm always like the bad guy. Strengths, I have been present every day by their side every single day. Since the day that they were born. My son slept away from me 2 nights. I probably am away from them. Last night we had a date night, and it was the first time, and I don't even know how long, since, I've had time away from them. So I'm always with them. I've been with them by their side. I've raised them. I've experienced every first with them. My strength is that in that regard, I'm very selfless. Like I don't, I have friends who they go out every Friday and they give their kids to their grandparents, and they go out and they go to the bar and they have drinks, or they go see a show together or whatever. And their kids sleep over and have since they were like 3 months old, whatever it might be. But that's just not, I don't do well with that. And again, if that's for one of my good friends, that's what keeps her sane. And ultimately that's what makes her a good mom. No way is right or wrong, guys. You have to figure out at the end of the day, what gives you the least amount of guilt, mom guilt, because that shit is so real. And what is best for your family. And you can't compare. You got to stay in your own lane, because what works for you and your family may not work for, Teresa and her family. Okay, so number 2, Rachel writes, as someone with perfectionist tendencies trying to relax a little and take life a little easier, do you think a person with a different background, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really love this question, so I kind of ignored it. Basically what I wrote is teach them about what you're capable of. That will serve them later on. And the intention to do well is what will see them through. You don't always have to be perfect, but if your intentions are good, that's what's going to help you and to be a successful mom. And then I love this. Choose a handful of things that you're a rock star at and do them as often as you can. The things that you're not good at, let them go. Even if your best friend is like the best at it and is like that mom that kills it at soccer games. Maybe she's like the coach of the team and her kid loves that. And you're like, damn it, why can I not coach soccer for my kid? Like my kid would probably love it. Let it go, because there's probably a strength that you have that you're crushing the game at that your friend wishes she could do as well. So stay in your own lane, stay focused on you, do what's best for you and your family. Okay, so, and then the third question was basically, what are your family's quirks and expectations? My biggest thing is it matters to me my kids are respectful and that they never take anything for granted. They appreciate the value of $1, anything that they have. If they get Christmas presents, birthday presents, they always remember who gave them what. Super thankful. That kind of stuff is really important to me, and that they understand the value and appreciate hard work. Like my son knows if he gets something at the store, mommy and daddy had to work really, really, really hard for him to be able to get that. Money doesn't grow on trees. Like that to me is a very important value. And the biggest thing for me is that they love and they love hard. And that applies to how they are to my husband and I, but most importantly, how they are to each other. One of my biggest things that I stress with my kids is that they always love each other, support each other. And it's truthfully the biggest thing that I get complimented on when it comes to my kids. People see me on social media, and I had somebody the other day, it was like 2 weeks ago, that said, your kids can't possibly really be like this to each other. Like they must like probably fight like cats and dogs, and you only post like when they're getting along. Truthfully, do they fight? Yes, but they love the shit out of each other and they care for each other. And that's the thing that I'm the most proud of. Like, it's really the most important to me because I never really had that. My brother and my sister and I were grown up in a very competitive environment, and it's just not healthy to have your kids compete against each other. It's just not. It creates animosity. It creates hatred, resentment. And I never want them to feel like they're competing for anything. I want them to always be a team. That's really, really important to me. And what doesn't matter to me? Grades, being the best player on the soccer team, which could be crazy for some people because those that know me really well know that I'm like super competitive. And I love soccer and I want my kid to be really good, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, I just want them to be good humans. I don't care if they have straight A's. I don't care if they're MVP of their soccer team. Like, none of that matters to me. Okay, what, according to Rachel, is a parent's primary job? You need to care, truly care that you're raising your babies to grow up to be good people. And she talks about how this is just like an extension of the daily requirements for new moms. New moms, remember, take care of the baby, take care of yourself. In terms of as they get older, you only have to care, not only about them, but also about yourself. You have to choose not to compare yourself to other moms, your family to other families, and your kids to other kids. So my takeaways, I love when she said, I thought the extra effort would win me brownie points with my boys, but it didn't. My children were little and their memory stretched only as far as yesterday. This is so important. Those of you guys that have like older kids, you'll start to get to this stage, like my son, my wonderful son who just came home. He's going to be 7 next month, and kids just don't, I tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, I don't think they appreciate me. Like, they don't tell me that they appreciate me. And he's like, Kim, they're babies. Like, they don't understand that. Like she talks about, their memory goes to yesterday. Like they're not gonna tell you every day you're the best mom in the world. They're not gonna make you feel valued or worthy or special or appreciated. It's just not gonna happen. So you gotta let that go. Because they do appreciate you. They just aren't at a stage in their life where they can show you. And my mom has shared this with me, like basically when they will share it is when they have their own kids, and you just pray and hope that you're alive for that day. I wrote, one day they'll appreciate and understand you. She said, there are so many things to remember, and I guess what ultimately stressed me out is the idea that other moms are somehow way better than I am. This all goes back to comparison is the thief of joy. Like it's so easy to sit on social media and see how people mom and think that they're killing it and you're sucking. But again, it all goes back to like you were chosen to be their mom, and what you do, as long as you do your best every single day, it's good enough. Okay, let's see. This one I had a lot to say, so I'll be quick. My biggest thing is at the end of the day, a sane mom who is happy will always be the best mom. If you're trying to do things because you think you should do them a certain way, or your friends do it a certain way, and it doesn't serve you and it doesn't make you happy, then ultimately you're not going to be the best mom that you can be. Stop being so hard on yourself. Focus on the good work you're doing. And how is that evident? Look at your kids. If your kids aren't little assholes, even though I think every kid is a little asshole at some point, but if they're not like, you know, horrible, what's the word with the D, Mike? Like when they end up in jail. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about? Anyways, whatever. If they're not criminals, basically, you're doing a good job. Delinquents. There it is. Okay. Imperfection is okay. Being a perfect mom is a myth, but being a pretty great mom most of the time is possible. And then there's no one best way to parent. I remember seeing this quote when I was going through kind of a tough time. My son was like almost 2. My brother's sister was getting married, and she decided no kids at the wedding. And I was like, well, we're traveling like 5 hours. Like, I really want my kid to be there. Where am I going to leave him? And, you know, she was like, just, you know, isn't there like your neighbor's daughter or somebody you can just bring with you for the weekend? Or like, isn't there like an 18-year-old that you can find that's like not doing anything for the weekend that can just like sit in the hotel with him? And I was like, just like hires an 18-year-old for the weekend and says like, hey, can you come hang out in a hotel with my kid? But it just didn't make sense to me. And I was like, this is not how I parent. Like, I'm not just going to leave my kid with any random person. But she hadn't had kids yet. And so she had these like theories on what I should do and how I should handle the situation. Now she has her own child, and she parents very similarly to me. And what was funny was a year ago, about 6 months ago, actually, her friend had a wedding at the Cape, which for them was like a 7-hour drive. She had my mother-in-law go, paid for my mother-in-law to have a hotel room and stay with their daughter because the child wasn't welcome at the wedding, and she didn't want to leave the kid home for the weekend. So hindsight is 20/20, guys, and people are always going to have ideas on how they think that you should do your life or raise your kids. And it reminds me of a quote where it says, before becoming a mother, I had 100 theories on how to bring up children. Now I have 4 children and only 1 theory. Love them, especially when they least deserve to be loved. So you're going to tell yourself, I'm going to parent like this. I told myself, my husband and I are going to have a date night every single Friday night. It's a non-negotiable. It'll happen every week. We won't miss it. We have a date night like once a year if we're lucky. I said my kids aren't going to sleep in my bed. My kids are in my bed every single night. Like usually my husband's falling off the side of the bed. So you can have as many theories as you want, but it's all going to change once your kids actually come into your world. And have grace with yourself and just do your best. All right. Okay. Chapter 10, last one. The lie, I should be further along by now. A keeper for me was big dreams shouldn't have an expiration date. Number 1, describe what you think the author means about perfect timing. Do you have your own story, big or little, about this? Can you think of a time when things didn't seem to work out for you? So perfect timing, she says, is everything happens exactly when it's supposed to happen. Maybe that goal wasn't meant to be yours. Maybe it was destined. Maybe you were destined for something so much cooler. And every single moment is preparing you for the next. So a couple of quick examples that I'll give. I went through IVF, as I've shared. So having my kids took me a long time. 5 years total between the two of them, of every single month going for treatments and not ending up pregnant. And I can remember when I was trying for my son and I was like, I'm never going to be a mom. How is this not happening? It took us 3 years. It was the 3 worst years of my life. Every single month, that disappointment, hormones everywhere because of all these injections I was doing. My marriage was crumbling. Like, everything was terrible. And I remember saying, like, why is this just not happening? Like, how can this not happen? Why is this happening to me? All of these things. And I look back now, and those 3 years, like, my husband and I really, really went through it. And I really believe it strengthened us. And I also look back and I think, like, my biggest thing I tell new married couples is take time. Like, take the time, because I look at it now and I'm like, if we had gotten pregnant right away, like I had wanted so badly, like I cried about every month, we wouldn't have gone on this trip or that trip, or we wouldn't have done this together. Or now I look at it and I'm like, just to sit and watch 20 minutes of a television show together is impossible. So I can look back now and say, like, those 3 years were really, really hard. And I felt like it was the worst time of my life, but it really was a blessing. And ultimately it brought my son to me. Similarly with my daughter, I had a miscarriage before her when we were going through our IVF. And I remember thinking, like, how did we do all of this testing? We had to do all of this screening to make sure our embryo was of the best quality, which assured the insurance that basically I was going to be pregnant, 100% certainty, and it didn't happen. And I still had a miscarriage anyway. And I felt like I did everything I could to try to set myself up for success. How the hell could it not have worked? And we had done pre-genetic screening, like I mentioned. So we knew we had 2 girl embryos and a boy. And we had a girl that was implanted, come to find out, when it didn't succeed. And I look at my daughter now, and I just look at her and I'm like, she was meant for me. She has so much of my personality. She gives me a run for my money, but that kid is like, the days that I pictured my daughter, she is every single thing that I pictured, everything I hoped for, everything I dreamed for. My son is exactly the same way. I wouldn't change them for anything. And not to say that, you know, the baby before wouldn't have been amazing and wonderful, because I'm sure she would have been, but she wasn't meant to be my daughter in this life. So it's really hard sometimes when you're in that hard time to see, like, it's hard to take a step back and say, this is all happening for a reason. This is a part of a bigger plan. But I really think it's true. And if you can live your life saying to yourself, like, this happened for me, and ultimately something so much better is going to happen, then I think you'll be in such a better place overall. Number 2, what is the key ingredient needed to live according to perfect timing? Why do you think so many of us struggle with this? Basically, it boils down to faith, the belief that your life will unfold as it was meant to, even when it unfolds into something painful and difficult to navigate. Hold on to the belief even when the process isn't simple or easy or safe. So why do so many people struggle with this? Because faith is a really hard thing, especially when you're in those hard times. It's really hard to step back during a miscarriage and say to yourself, like, you know, because everybody will say it to you, this is all a part of a bigger plan. You know, this was meant to be. And you're like, what? How is this meant to be? Like, this is horrible. But if you can try to just shift your mindset just even a little bit during those tough times and just say to yourself, okay, this sucks, because it can still suck. It can still suck, and you can accept that it sucks, but just tell yourself that it is happening for something so much greater, and you'll pull out of that tough time so much easier, I think. And hold on to belief even when the process isn't simple or easy or safe. All right, number 3, last one. Rachel writes, the most beautiful things in my life were never on my to-do list. So what's the point of making the list? Why make goals and work so hard at achieving them if we might end up taking a different path? And I wrote down, your goals or things on your to-do list are stepping stones and stops needed along the way to get you to your ultimate destination. So focus on what you've had done, celebrate the small moments, and keep moving forward. My takeaway, I love when she talked about how oftentimes people are very somber on their birthdays. I just celebrated my birthday on Wednesday, and I started to have that feeling of like, oh my God, I'm so old, I'm ancient, I'm starting to have wrinkles, like, how is this happening to me? But it is true, a lot of the times people that are somber about another year, and this happens a lot too, like with New Year's Day. The people who are like somber about a new year are usually the ones that didn't achieve what they wanted to the year before. So like people that get to New Year's and they're like, ugh, my New Year's resolution this year is exactly the same as what it was last year and the year before and the year before. A lot of the time people are somber or dislike their birthdays or New Year or whatever milestone it might be because of what wasn't or hasn't happened. And that birthday or that new year kind of serves as like a reminder of the things that they didn't or hadn't achieved. And her example, her analogy of like when your baby takes their first steps, what if you looked at that baby and you were like, well, why didn't you run? You know, that feeling of like nothing is ever good enough. Celebrate your victories, even if they're small, because you're still making progress and you're still moving forward. Okay, so that brings us to chapter 11, which we'll discuss next week. I'm going to unmute you guys and open up the floor so that if anybody wants to share their takeaways. Hi, Marianne. Oh, shoot. Okay, yeah, I think I unmuted all you guys. Wait, hold on. No, I didn't. No, I think I got everybody. Maybe not. Haley, I can't unmute you for some reason. I don't know why, but it's not letting me. All right, so have at it. Anybody that wants to share anything, I'm all ears. Don't all talk at once. Anybody.
Okay. I can't hear you, Marianne. I saw your mouth moving.
Oh, shoot. All right, hold on. Let me see.
Oh, what about now?
Oh, can we, okay, try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It was kind of funny that a lot of the quotes that you picked are the same things that I had written down, and it was like, and even like on the post that I had done on Facebook, and it was just some of the stuff that had stuck out to me were like the exact ones that you were saying. So I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. We're on the same page.
And too, like what you were saying, like with motherhood, we moved when I was like 5 months pregnant.
Yep.
So like when I had Alex, I was like new job, new house, new town, new friends, new baby. And I just remember it being so overwhelming and like looking back when she said like baby first, then you, like I wish I thought of that more at the time.
Yep.
I was trying to do like so much.
Yep. Yep. I think we all tend to do that. It's like we try to take on everything and we just bombard ourselves with this pressure and you just start feeling like you're drowning. And it's this feeling, you know what it is? It's that feeling of it's never enough, because if the baby's good and you're good and you did one load of laundry, maybe the dishes all went to hell and the house is a mess. And so like, I remember my mom saying to me, I had this talk with my mom when Mackenzie, it was after Mackenzie, because I felt like I did really well with Landon, but after that second, I was a disaster. And I can remember saying to her, like, I'm failing every single day. And she's like, how are you failing? Look at your son, look at your daughter, look at your life, look at this, look at that. And I was like, Mom, my house is a mess. You know, I never have time with my husband. I don't ever get the laundry done. I'm not doing this. I don't have dinner on the table. And she was like, Kimberly, you need to focus on small successes, because it's not going to happen for a while. Like your house isn't going to be spotless, the laundry done, the dishes done, the baby's happy, the kid's happy, you're happy, the husband's happy. It's not all going to happen. So you have to find, like, make your priorities. So for example, one of my husband's thing is like dishes in the sink, because when he comes home and he usually cooks dinner for us because I'm a horrible cook. So he said, no, I'm not. He's just sucking up right now. But you know, when he comes home to make dinner, it's annoying when there's dishes in the sink, because then he's got to try to clean up the sink to be able to do the stuff he has to do for dinner. So you have to make your list. Like, and my priority list is probably not going to be the same, Marianne, as yours, because maybe what really, really matters to me, like having the carpet vacuumed, you're like, I don't care if my carpet's vacuumed, or maybe having organization, like the toys picked up is super important to you and Al, and the other stuff doesn't really matter. You have to pick like your top 3 things and then just focus on those. Because once you're successful at those, you're like, I killed my day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I've gotten better about that, but it took time. I mean, Alex was going to be 5 and I'm finally getting there.
Yeah. Yep. You'll get there. But again, I wish that I had this chapter when I had especially Mackenzie, because if I could have read, take care of baby, take care of yourself. And in my case, in that situation, it would have been take care of the kids, take care of yourself. Is Landon good? Is Mackenzie good? Am I good? If we're good, I succeeded. That would have taken so much weight off of me. And I feel like I wouldn't have drowned the way that I drowned. Just to be able to say like, okay, all my 3 things on my checklist are taken care of. There, I succeeded. Because most days as a mom, you don't feel like you did a whole lot of anything. So it's hard. All right, what else you guys have? Erin, you usually are good about sharing. She's like, Kim, why'd you put me on the spot?
I'm just enjoying listening, but I guess the only other thing I would say, I posted some reflection earlier this week, but I just see throughout her book, not necessarily in one of these chapters specifically, just like taking something that's not necessarily good and having something good come from it.
Yes.
And even though I'm not a parent, I saw that throughout the different parenting chapters. Just as you said, not having as much of a victim mindset. It's like, we're smart, we can reassure ourselves and figure this out, and we can do that with people who support us.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really easy to get, like for me, like I said, I grew up, a lot of what we are, or a lot of our behaviors are learned behaviors from our parents. And my dad was the optimist and super, positive, and my mom was the pessimist, but I spent a lot more time with my mom than I did with my dad. And I think that that's just something that I have to work on every single day. Like we went through this period of time where my husband would be like, oh my God, can you just call me one day and not be like a raging lunatic about something? Like I would call him, I'd be like, the kids did, blah, and he would be like, oh, my phone number showed up, and he's like, silence, on with my day, because he's probably like, she's gonna light into me about something. And it wasn't even like, never was his fault. It was just this feeling of like, how is this my life? And I used to sit there every single day and feel sorry for myself. And then I'm really trying to focus, like you said, on finding the good in the really, really bad moments. Like there's always, even if it's like a sliver, like if it's like this big because it's a really awful time, there's always some sort of positive thing that you can get from it. And I try, when it's a really hard time, to think of it, if I can't find anything good, I try to look at it as what it's teaching me or how it's changing me. Because, like when we go through, I just recently lost a friend, Marianne knew her as well, but a friend of mine who was in my sorority from college to cancer. And it was a really, really hard time, and a lot of times and a lot of moments of reflection, like, excuse me, seeing her go through these treatments. And when I say she was like the most positive, bright human you could ever meet in your entire life, like literally the most wonderful person, and you're seeing them go through these horrible times. And I remember it like just being so negative, and I would talk to my friend Michelle, and I would be like, this is sickening. Like, how is this possibly happening? How is it happening to her? And when she died, I really had this time where I was like, this is not good. There's nothing good about this. But the one thing I learned from Alyssa and what I try to focus on is that through all of the chemo, she was so positive, and she shared her journey with others to try to uplift others and to try to show others and be inspiring to others. And it taught me that like life is really, really short, and you never know what tomorrow can bring. But if you stay positive, you know, like she literally lived her life until the very, very last day. She never spent time wallowing in her sorrows. She never felt sorry for herself. And I would have days where I would be like, I'm complaining that I had the worst day ever. And I have this friend who is in a hospital, in an ICU, had a brain tumor, you know, removed, and is like barely functioning and as sick as can be with pneumonia and lung cancer and cancer everywhere. And she's in all this pain. And I think I had a bad day, and she's over here sharing how blessed she is. So it's again, it's that perception thing. It's all about looking through different lenses. And that taught me so much about pessimism versus optimism. And she truly, like, I always think of it and I'm like, if I, God forbid, ever had brain cancer, I feel like I would be the person that just cried every day and was so anxious about the end. And I learned that you have to find the things to hold on to and to make you smile and to get you through the hard moments, because you have to live your life, you know?
Yeah. Well, finding that is hard work too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. For sure. Yep. What else?
One thing that in chapter 10 too, that I think that goes with every single chapter, which she says, like, remember when you keep silent, you give these lies power.
Yep.
And like, that's like literally for every chapter.
Yep. And I wrote down where she said, where she talks about how it becomes white noise. Like when you keep them silent and you just keep them to yourselves, and you, it's like you don't ever vocalize them. So you don't ever have somebody say like, Kim, that's ridiculous, you know? And so to you keep telling yourself it, and ultimately it becomes like white noise. You don't even realize you're doing it, but you doing that alters your subconscious so much, and it just sets you up for failure, because you're basically telling yourself every single day, all day long, you're not enough and you're not good enough. Which, if your subconscious thinks that, how are you ever going to be successful in any piece of your life? And it's you know, vocalize, like, that's why, again, I go back to, like, I think therapy is so important. Who was it? I think it was either you, Marianne, or you, Erin, that said, there's a lot you think you could learn, or maybe it was Haley. There's a lot that you think you can learn from therapy. Like, you had a great life growing up, but that you would love somebody to be able to give you that insight as to why your tendencies and your anxieties and your fears are your fears. And I'm a firm believer in that. Like, that's what therapists are there to do. That's their job. Like, that's their specialty. And I have learned so much about myself. I didn't have this horrific childhood, but I certainly didn't have a beautifully walk in the park childhood. And I definitely had my things that were really, really hard to deal with. And they shaped me into who I am and why I am the way that I am. I have a lot of insecurities when it comes to feeling like I'm a priority. I need to be number one. I need to feel like I am most important than anybody else, especially when it comes to my husband. And a lot of that I never really understood. I just thought that I was like this high maintenance, like, nag of a wife. But they helped me to understand that what I went through as a child and what I continue to struggle with as an adult, as a product of my environment, is why I have these tendencies, why I have these insecurities. So, yeah, I think it's, you know, I think it might've been Haley actually that said it, but there's so much insight. And when you can understand, I think it's not even just about us. Like, for me to be able to understand why I am the way that I am is helpful, but for my husband and for your family and your friends, you know, like, that's so important, because they just think we're freaking crazy. Let's be honest. They're like, she's bat crazy. But there's always an explanation for our insecurities and our things that are our things. And to be able to understand that, I think, is super powerful. Megan, you got anything? Megan's going for a tour around her house.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my dogs outside.
I'm fine.
Not really. Sadly, those parenting chapters don't really apply to me, so.
I know. Not yet. Maybe you'll
Not yet.
It'll help you, though, when you do. I mean, like I said, I wish I had chapter 8 when I was a new mom, or before becoming a mom. Like, this for you and Erin, like, Erin, I don't know if you plan to have kids, or Megan, you either, but like, if you do, this all right now is so helpful. Like, take it from Marianne and I, because it will, like, hearing all of this is going to be, it's going to be like freeing for you when you're a mom. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be like, I remember when Kim was talking about this, and I remember Rachel Hollis saying, you know, take care of the baby, take care of yourself. I wish that I had had somebody to tell me that. And, you know, you'll have like your mom or your best friend or somebody will be like, well, all that matters is that you're doing a great job taking care of the baby, but it doesn't feel like that. And like hearing all of this and hearing other people's experiences, I think will be super helpful. Even if you're not a mom yet, it will be when you decide to lose your sanity and become a mom. All right. So I saw something in the chat, but I think it was just Teresa saying she had to go. Okay, yeah. All right, let me close this. All right, so this, let me close it, okay. Haley, do you have anything? Haley, was it you? Was I right that was talking about like you had a really good childhood and, but you think therapy would be helpful? Yeah?
Yeah, I just thought that it would be interesting to find out like, I have a lot of like little quirks. I get anxiety and I just have like weird things that bother me, and I just never know where they come from because I feel like everything's always been, I don't know, I don't want to say easy, but there just hasn't been a lot of things that have happened to me in my life that I would consider completely devastating. So I just think it would be neat. I actually have a friend who is a therapist, and her and I have talked a couple of times, and she said, you know, anytime that I would like to talk to her, but I just kind of like to go, I don't even know, like regularly, not all the time, but just regularly, just to see if I could uncover where certain things have come from, and maybe even like hear some of my anxiety and just some of the things that I have going on. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think that there's always an explanation to why we are the way that we are, whether it be like a learned behavior, product of the environment, you know, or and I feel like there's always, you know, and I've learned this from therapy too, but I think we tend to minimalize things because it makes us feel better. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're saying there wasn't anything too drastic or awful, which is probably the case. But also sometimes too, I think we tend to downplay things, A, because we don't want to seem dramatic, B, because it just makes us feel better to think that we don't have quote unquote issues from things that we were exposed to as kids or whatever. Like nobody feels proud. Like I don't feel proud when I'm like, I didn't have a great childhood, you know, that doesn't feel good to anybody. But I think that sometimes, you know, what I learned is things that I minimalized my whole life that I would kind of just say, it's almost like I made excuses for them. Like, well, you know, it's not that horrible. My childhood wasn't that horrible. But for me, and without going into too much detail, like to have a professional say, no, like that's actually very traumatic. Like that's worse than people going to war. So I have a family member that has addiction issues, and it has been that way my whole life. And I always minimalized it because I think it made me feel better. And I would just be like, well, it is what it is. It's not that bad. You know, it's not horrible.
Right.
It could be worse or whatever. But I learned so much about myself and my tendencies and my character traits and all of these things like that really have helped me as a mom, as a wife, as a friend, as a daughter, as a family, you know what I mean? So I think that there's always things that you can learn about yourself and things that we may downplay or minimize that have more an effect than we think.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is if you can understand, if you can learn those things and you can understand them, you can work through them. So like I suffer from really bad anxiety as well. And I've kind of learned through therapy, like what triggers my anxiety, you know, and that has been a huge help for me because learning what triggers it and B, learning what to do when it's triggered have been huge resources for me so that I don't feel anxiety can be a very overwhelming feeling. And it can be like, you just feel like you get walloped and you don't have any idea how to cope or deal.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think I literally believe that every single human being can benefit from seeing a therapist. In fact, my husband and I go to marriage counseling because I think every single married couple can benefit from marriage counseling. Like that's their job. Their job is to help you to understand each other better, to help, kind of figure out my weaknesses, his weaknesses, and how we can help each other with them. And so it's been really, really helpful. And
Right.
I don't feel ashamed of it. A lot of people are like, oh my God, you guys are going to marriage counseling, you're going to get divorced. I'm like, no, probably not, because we're going to marriage counseling. Like the people that I think end up in trouble, and the marriages that end up in trouble, and the couples that end up in trouble, are the people that try to save face, and they go on social media and everything's sunshine and rainbows, and they're drowning inside. They don't talk to anybody about it. They kind of isolate themselves, and then it ends up all going to what, because they didn't just get help with it. Would you like to say hello? Okay, stand by yourself then. And you come say hello to everybody. And then, well, they can't see you. All they see is your curls. There you go. Say hi. Can you wave? Good girl. Yeah, I'm going to go take my shower now.
I'm going to take my shower now.
In the night.
Good night.
Okay. I love you.
Mommy, why don't you do it?
Oh, you want to do it again?
Yeah.
All right. So I think, next week we will talk about, here, we'll get it so they can see more than just your curls on top of your head. So next week we'll cover chapters 11 through 15, right? Yep, 11 through 15. And we'll aim for same time, same place. Sound good? All right, guys, thank you so much for jumping on the recording. If you missed part of it, we'll be back. I'll post it in the group. I'm going to stop the recording now.